Yo, what is up guys? It's the Nightwing at Way of Life Esports coming at you guys with another video here today, and in today's video we are going to be talking about Cloud9, as Cloud9 had a underwhelming and bitter end to the LCS 2022 Spring Split. So coming into the LCS 2022 Spring Split, they all end on this philosophy with LS. You saw the welcome LS's head coach video, and then you also had the LS video on the Cloud9 League of Legends YouTube channel, where he was talking about what his ideas were for Academy and how they wanted to integrate Eternal Scrims with the Academy team and the main LCS team. So you're factoring in every player and decision they made pretty much centered around LS. And then when they announced that they were actually firing LS 2 weeks into the LCS 2022 Spring Split, you have to kind of factor in everything that they did in the offseason was centered around LS. And if you take LS as the main centerpiece out of that, it all falls apart. So even during the LCS 2022 lock-in tournament, like the other players that they had, you just knew were not gonna be really that good. Like Sven, I thought he was still a pretty solid ADC. I thought just the reason why he looked bad in the games that he did was pretty much because of Isles, and we saw how bad Isles was during the LCS 2022 lock-in tournament. I thought that Darshan was a pretty nice rock in the top lane, but he's never going to be that player that can be what he once was. It's just not going to be that way, obviously. So you're thinking to yourself, after Cloud9 lost to Evil Geniuses in the LCS 2022 lock-in tournament, you know, you definitely need the players that LS were bringing over: Winsome, Summit, and Berserker. Now, obviously, Cloud9 did decently well in the LCS 2022 Spring Split regular season. They were at one point first place, and they actually could have got the bye in the first round had they not, like, literally fallen apart in their last, out of their last 5 games, they lost like 3 of them, actually. So that was actually pretty concerning. So Fudge going on Twitter and saying they went 0-15 in scrims. You know, I'm pretty sure they even lost to their Academy team a lot, because their Academy team was actually drafting way better than them. Then at some point, they benched Winsome after they lost to 100 Thieves during their LCS 2022 Spring Split playoff match against them in round 1. And most people knew going in they would lose to 100 Thieves. Now, Summit was actually a really insane player for Cloud9. And it kind of sucks that he's gone now, because you kind of factor in, you know, if the split just went a little bit more differently and they maybe had kept LS, you have another MVP. Maybe if the stars aligned and it all worked out the way LS had predicted, you know, maybe Summit goes back-to-back MVPs, honestly. I think just for what I saw out of him, out of all the Cloud9 top laners, I personally think Summit had the highest ceiling. That's including legendary Cloud9 top laners like Licorice and Impact and Balls and all those other top laners they've had over the many years. You know, it just kind of sucks that you see a player of that caliber just getting kicked off the roster after one split. But I understand why they did that, because he's more or less so, not even just a selfish player, because he kind of creates his own leads. It's just that you have to kind of buy into that playstyle, and if teams just draft effectively for it, then it's obviously not going to work. The reason why it worked out so well in best of ones was because that's just the volatility of best of ones. You can get away with stuff like that. But in playoff games, you can just ban certain champions and draft a certain way to just take them out. So Summit pretty much just got figured out going into the LCS 2022 Spring Split playoffs. He pretty much fell apart. Playing Renekton, there were certain champions he literally only played against certain players because he obviously knew he could beat them, but against other competent teams, that didn't happen. He was pretty much gapped in a lot of games, overextending, just dying 1v1, just playing really shitty. He went from literally probably like the best player in the league to just absolutely looking like a piece of shit. So, Winsome. I think the problem with Winsome wasn't really necessarily his gameplay. I think he had a lot of bad engages. Like, if you go back and watch some of the games, like, obviously, I tend to go back and watch some of the games to get a more clear perspective of how they're actually playing the game. Winsome and Berserker actually had a not so good laning phase. A lot of people don't forget that. They actually had a pretty bad laning phase when they were first playing games for Cloud9 at the start of the regular season, actually. And then, like, Berserker came into his own form. Winsome never did. But the problem here is, people need to understand this, is when you're a support player, you have to inherently pair up, obviously, with your jungler and your mid laner. Mid, jungle duo, jungle support, mid support, are all very, very key things to a lot of team success. And if Fudge and Blabber can't communicate with him, that is going to be an inherent problem. And you make that even worse when you're taking away the guy that brought him over here. And I think LS had a good idea for bringing these players. And it's crazy. Like, people talk about Summit, Winsome, and Berserker. I mean, two of them effectively were very good. And I think Winsome got the raw end of the bad end of the stick, given his position, and I think he was the one really affected by the culture shock, because Jack has talked about there's like this culture shock with Korean players that come over from Korea to North America, or anyone that's not really from North America coming over here, like traditional import players actually. So I believe at some point he just mentally blew apart in his brain. It just all came crumbling down, and he had a cultural shock. And he said that also happened with Impact before too. Back in the day, back in like 2017, the days where Jensen forgot to press Zonya's and lost to Cloud9 the title. But nevertheless, he was an all right support. I think players like Core JJ, Afromu, Alea played way better actually. Huhi started stepping up a lot more. Huhi had a pretty rough start, but played clearly a lot better. Vulcan was better than him. He was literally, he could easily break into the top 4 if maybe give it another split, but just from what I saw, he was an alright support. His ceiling may have been high, but doesn't really matter now at this point, does it? I never really even bought into Isles. I saw him during the LCS 2022 locking tournament. I know he's from OCE. I actually used to watch OCE a lot, actually. So if you guys ask me about OCE, I know a little bit more than I should about OCE back in the day when it was, considered a minor region. Now it's just considered whatever the fuck is now, honestly. Yeah, I just never thought he was that good. Honestly, like, he was making plays, but he was making plays in very suboptimal situations, and like, a lot of the calls you could tell he was making, a lot of his teammates weren't really on board with. I mean, the support is supposed to be dictating a lot of what the early game is, like coordinating a lot with your jungler and your mid laner. Just didn't really feel like this guy really had what it takes to play on a top organization like Cloud9. The whole Fudge mid lane situation. So I never liked the Fudge mid lane situation, because I think I even said this last year on some of my videos I was talking about Cloud9, was literally, if it doesn't work out, he's just going to go back to top lane, because he's not a mid laner. He's a top laner. The reason why they had him top lane initially is because he's a good top laner, and it makes no sense in terms of his growth as a top laner, specifically because he literally became, like, what, a top 3 top laner by the end of 2021 for the LCS. Like, he started out pretty shitty, and rightfully so. He was trash for it, but then improved a hell of a lot and became a really good top laner. So that right there stuns his growth, becoming a better top laner, putting him into a role that he's not even really that good at, only to just then switch him after a split to the other role. Now, I know what Fudge said. If someone's better than him, he should play top lane. That's fine. But Fudge is not a mid laner, right? So you have this guy who's not a mid laner playing mid lane. He's like very suboptimal at playing mid lane. The only reason why he did as well as he did was because the LCS mid lane pool was just really weak. Like, let's be honest here, if Abadage and Bjergsen actually had been playing up to their form, this guy would have gotten completely shit stomped. Let's be honest here. Like, he was losing to Jojo Pion at a certain point. Like, that's pretty fucking bad. And Jojo Pion, credit to him, it's not that bad, actually. He's actually pretty solid now. I still think he has a lot of issues, but he's overall, you can kind of see where his ceiling is at, So, like, you gotta kind of look at it that way. He was decently struggling with a split with the weakest LCS mid lane pool ever, and he's not even a mid laner, Yes, he had pop-off games. That doesn't mean shit. I mean, everyone has pop-off games. That's cool. I mean, it happens. Like the worst players ever have pop-up games. It's all about the players who are really good at mid lane, who can be consistent and have pop-up games whenever you need them to, separate to be carries. That all matters too. Like, yes, he had games where he shined, like the Golden Guardian series. But in playoffs, not regular season, he was just out of his element. And the 100 Thieves series played pretty bad, Against the EG series, played pretty bad. Played really bad against EG and during the locking tournament. You know, I'm just saying, like, a lot of people like to extrapolate regular season stuff, but when you're looking at games that matter, specifically playoff games, the ones in lock-in, the ones during this past split, who's honestly not that good. And, like, if he was as good as a lot of people said, they would just keep him mid. I mean, if you take a player like that, and you think he's that good out of mid, you are borderline brain dead. Because why would you take a good player mid and switch him to top if you think he's that good at mid? So, yes, you go and get a mid laner like Jensen. That makes perfect sense. I didn't like the idea of a mid. It only worked in hindsight and in context with what LS actually wanted to do with the roster. You know, because you want to bring over Summit, who's an upgrade over Fudge in top lane, and they had the whole import rule going on thing, so it makes sense for what LS needed. But after LS is gone, yeah, like, why do you keep him mid? Just get an actual mid laner. It makes more sense for them to actually get Power of Evil than putting Fudge back mid, you know, so yeah, that's my thing on Fudge mid. Berserker I think is good. I think he's a top 3, top 4 ADC. I think they actually did get a good ADC, you know. Is he as good as, like, Sven and Sneaky? Well, you gotta kind of factor in, I need to see more out of him. Honestly, like, I've seen multiple years of Sneaky and Sven. I've only seen just a little bit of Berserker, but I think they actually have a good ADC. So the roster they're going to be working on now makes a hell of a lot more sense that you can easily communicate with certain players. And I know someone brought up, well, if Huhi can play support, then Sven can play support. That's literally not how that works. That is literally okay, I'll just say this. That's just completely asinine and completely such a weird, arbitrary statement and just super anecdotal to go, well, if one guy can do it, this guy can. That's not how that works. Yes, anyone in theory can play any other role. In theory, they can, and play it maybe well. But there's a reason why when some players role swap, they just go back to the original lane or the original role, because that's what they're good at. You know, they are. If they don't make worlds coming out of the LCS 2022 summer split, they're not going to keep Sven support because he's not a support. You know, he's not really a good support. I don't know what twice you see it. He's not a support actual player. He's an ADC. You know. Because if they thought Sven was as good as a role swap support, you know, you could clearly just play him this split. They could have actually did that in playoffs, but they didn't do that. Just saying, they could have easily did that, yet they didn't do it. Just saying. I mean, like, these situations are all easily explainable, but I get it. Like, some people just don't kind of understand the nuance of all that stuff. You guys kind of think of it one way. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you're going to do it as good as someone else. And Huhi was just one of those weird anomalies where it just panned out to work for him very well. I don't think, he was definitely at his peak, he was like a top 4 LCS mid laner, but then again, that was with a lot of bad games and a lot of good games too. It's weird with his career. That's a different video for another day, but yeah, just because it worked out very well for Huhi, just because it worked out very well for Huhi doesn't mean it's going to work out very well for Sven. That's not how that works. Just because it works out for that guy doesn't mean it's going to work for this guy. It's not how that works. Like, he can just suck at it, you know? So, I like the changes that they're making, except they're kind of doing the same shit, but, I mean, we'll see how it goes. One and done. C9 releases Winsome Isles and reigning MVP Summit after one LCS split. The reigning LCS MVP and his former teammates are officially on the market. Cloud9 has officially released top laner Summit as well as support players Winsome and Isles from its League of Legends roster. The team announced via Twitter on May 2nd. All 3 players made their debuts with Cloud9 earlier this year and played just a single split with the organization. You know, back in the day with League, players used to stay on the same teams for like a whole year. Now you're seeing people get cut like splits, you know. They announced on Twitter, C9 League of Legends. Not a huge fan of, I've just never been a fan of like any esport teams or just the ones in LCS having like these big YouTube channels and then making a League of Legends side of it. I just never been a fan of that. Just a personal preference of mine. I just don't like it, honestly. I think it really just cuts into your views and shit like that. Today, we part ways with Summit, Winsome, and Isles. With this, the 3 become free agents. It's been a wild split full of ups and downs, and we're all with us every step of the way. Thank you for our time together, and best of luck. Summit could go back to the LCK and probably be the best fit, I think, for Gen G. I think the LCK needs players like him on some of the rosters. Now, there was rumors that he's difficult to work with, and I mean, here, if the rumors are true that he's difficult to work with, that would make a lot of sense as to the reason why he was on like these bottom tier rosters in the LCK for quite some time. Like, you gotta kind of factor in some of these like LCK team owners literally opted into taking a worse player than rather picking him. That's saying something. So if he's difficult to work with, then you could probably extrapolate, okay, he's difficult to work with. That's why these other top teams and these top orgs in the LCK didn't want to actually pick him up. Because what's the point of picking him up if he's going to be a piece of shit to you? You know, makes perfect sense. Not saying he is, just saying that if that's the case, that's the reason why. Alright, Summit, who won the 2022 LCS Spring Split MVP award, now finds himself without a home in the LCS. The 4-year Pro League veteran who played for 3 different Korean organizations in the LCK between 2017 and 2021 could return to his former league for summer. Alternatively, Summit could stay in NA. He'd be widely viewed as an on-paper upgrade for multiple teams in the LCS. The only team with a current vacancy at top lane is Dignitas, who released their spring top laner, Fake God. I mean, Summit's played on these bottom-tier orgs before in the LCK, so I mean, hey, just be in a different region. Winsome and Isles split time on the LCS stage this season, with Winsome playing support for Cloud9 during the regular season and their first playoff series. Isles manned the role during the lock-in tournament and during the back end of Cloud9's spring playoff run. The team finished in 4th place this split after being eliminated by Evil Geniuses in the second round of the playoffs lower bracket. Rumors and reports surrounding C9's roster going into the summer split have been circulating for the better part of 2 weeks. After Cloud9's spring 2022, mid laner Fudge was reported to be headed back to the top lane by upcomers Brick Seeger. The subsequent impending release of Summit appeared all but inevitable. Additionally, with a void at mid lane to be filled, oh, literally, it's Jensen right there. So, yeah, there you go. Cloud9 will have just over 6 weeks to finalize its new League of Legends roster for Summer Split. The LCS season is slated to pick up again on Saturday, June 18th. And yeah, that's actually good. Okay, so I'm fine with these changes. Like, you know, integrating at least 2 Korean players is definitely going to be hard. And if Summit knows that he's a lot better than the person that's talking to him, head coach, and better than the players he's around, it's gonna have a bit of an ego, not gonna lie. Yeah, I mean, it happens, you know, for orgs like this, like Cloud9. Obviously, I love Cloud9. I'm always gonna support them, and G2, and RNG, and Gen.G. So the 4 teams I support throughout the 4 major regions, obviously. You know, Gen.G, the only team that I root for that doesn't have a title yet. So, yeah, let's maybe work on getting one of those Gen.G. But, yeah, casually optimistic about these changes that they're going to be making. I think Jensen is an upgrade over Fudge at mid lane. I think that's fine. Blabber's had... It's really hard to say. Like, I don't know. I don't know why they opted into Blabber so much at this point still, but, I mean, he's still a top 4 jungler in the LCS with ups and downs. Fudge going back top lane. He's still going to be, I think, top 4 in his role. Most likely still should be top 4 in his role. Bot lane would be Berserker and Sven. Berserker and Sven bot lane would be fucking weird. Now, to be fair, if they had issues with communication, I mean, it's just, that's why I'm casually optimistic. Like, I could see some of these pieces working out, but will this have them be able to compete with the likes of 100 Thieves, Evil Geniuses, Team Liquid, you know, like, those are your big competition right now. It's just EG, 100 Thieves, and Team Liquid. Those are your competition right now. And maybe TSM, if they kind of get their shit together, you know, FlyQuest is still kind of there as well. Like, the LCS is definitely competitive, so them putting together a basic ragtag roster obviously is not going to work out like it did years ago. You got to have some competent pieces in here. So yeah, what do you guys think about Cloud9's releasing Winsome, Isles, and Summit? See you guys later. I have my Cloud9 podcast that will be on Sunday, where we'll go over the RNG LPO versus Top Esports BO5 that I actually just made sure I did prep for, and talk about TSM and then their abusive owner, Reginald. That's what is reported. So, see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I'm the Nightwing, and Way of Life Esports is signing out, guys. Peace.